It was a quiet night, and the stars hung low over the Mediterranean Sea. A small wooden boat floated aimlessly on the dark waters. No sails, no oars. On board were a group of terrified people, faces pale, hearts heavy with fear. Among them was a man named Joseph, a wealthy merchant, but now just a desperate survivor. Beside him sat Mary, the mother of Jesus, her eyes swollen from crying, but still full of a quiet strength. Around them, other followers of Jesus huddled together, their whispers barely rising above the sound of the waves. How did they get here? What had they done to deserve this cruel fate? The answer lay in the events just days before. Following his crucifixion, his followers became targets. The Romans, threatened by his growing influence, weren't satisfied with just silencing him. They wanted to erase his entire legacy. One by one, they rounded up his closest friends and family, but they couldn't just execute them outright. Killing people like Joseph of Arimathea, a man of great wealth and influence, could spark an uprising. So, they devised a plan far more chilling. Under the cover of darkness, the Romans loaded Joseph, Mary, and nearly 100 others onto a rickety boat. There was no food, no water, there was no way to guide them. They weren't being sent to a destination, they were being sent to die. The open sea would be their executioner, the waves their grave. As the boat drifted further from shore, the group prayed silently. The stars were their only witnesses, and the vast, empty ocean stretched endlessly before them. No one knew what would happen. Against all odds, the boat didn't capsize, it didn't drift aimlessly forever. Days later, it reached the coast of France, landing in a place now called Sainte-Marie de la Mer, Saint Mary of the Sea. To this day, the locals tell legends of how a boat with no sails or rudder miraculously arrived, carrying the followers of Jesus. The truth about Jesus, his disciples, and their perilous journey will disturb you. Your understanding will deepen as you uncover the extent of his story's concealment from us. The crucifixion of Jesus was meant to end his story, but it was just the beginning of something far greater, something that would challenge the foundations of the world's most powerful empire. After his death, the lives of his disciples and family became even more perilous. The Romans, afraid of rebellion, sought to erase not just Jesus, but anyone who followed him. What followed was a tale of danger, survival, and incredible determination. One figure who played a key role in this unfolding drama was Joseph of Arimathea. More than just a wealthy man, he was Jesus' great uncle, deeply connected to both Jewish and Roman circles. According to accounts, Joseph was the man who bravely claimed Jesus' body from the cross and laid it in his own tomb, Matthew 27:57-60. But his role didn't end there. Behind the scenes, Joseph became a protector, risking everything to save Jesus' family and followers. In approximately 36 AD, Joseph, along with Mary, Jesus' mother, Mary Magdalene, Lazarus, and other disciples, faced a grim fate. After the crucifixion, the Roman authorities began rounding up Jesus' closest followers. But executing high-profile figures like Joseph outright was risky. His wealth and influence could spark a backlash. Instead, the Romans devised a cruel plan. They placed him and nearly 100 others on a boat without sails or oars, casting them into the Mediterranean Sea. The waves left their survival to chance. Remember to join our community by subscribing to this channel. Here's where the story takes a remarkable turn. The boat, adrift with no means of steering, didn't sink. Days later, it miraculously landed on the southern coast of France, in a small region now known as Sainte-Marie de la Mer. The local traditions maintain that the group sought refuge in the area, and generations have preserved the story of their arrival. Statues of the Three Marys, Mary Magdalene, Mary Salome, and Mary of Clopas, are still revered in the region, and annual celebrations mark this miraculous event. But the story didn't end in France. Joseph of Arimathea continued north, eventually reaching Glastonbury in England, a place he had visited during his trading days. Known for its ancient tin mines, England had long been a key trading partner with the Middle East. Legends claim that Joseph had brought a young Jesus to Glastonbury years earlier, exposing him to druidic teachings and profound spiritual practices. It was here in Glastonbury that Joseph founded what many consider the first Christian church, though it wasn't called a church at the time. It was known simply as the Way. Unlike the hierarchical systems that would later dominate organized religion, the Way was decentralized and open. Followers gathered in homes or small communities, sharing teachings, meditation practices, and healing techniques. Anyone could contribute, echoing the egalitarian spirit of Jesus' teachings. This version of Christianity, rooted in freedom, personal growth, and shared wisdom, was vastly different from what it would later become. Early Christian leaders seeking to consolidate power found such open practices threatening. Over time, a more controlled narrative overshadowed these stories of Joseph, Mary, and the disciples' journeys, pushing them aside. Yet evidence of these events remains. Historical accounts, such as the drama of the Lost Disciples by George F. Jowett, describe Joseph of Arimathea as a pivotal figure in early Christianity. His connections to the Roman elite and his extensive trade networks placed him uniquely at the intersection of politics and faith. His efforts to preserve and spread Jesus' teachings were instrumental in shaping the Christian movement during its most vulnerable years. Even more intriguing are the local legends that persist to this day. In Glastonbury, the site of the Way is considered one of the holiest places on earth. People believe that Joseph of Arimathea and possibly Mary, the mother of Jesus, rest there. Similarly, Sainte Marie de la Mer celebrates the arrival of the exiles as a pivotal moment for the spread of Christianity in Europe. But why did the Bible omit these stories? The answer may lie in the tension between faith and historical evidence. Early church leaders sought to create a unified, streamlined narrative that could be easily taught and controlled. Stories of independent followers spreading Jesus' teachings across Europe outside the reach of centralized authority didn't align with this goal. Over time, people either forgot these accounts, dismissed them as legends, or deliberately suppressed them. This raises a powerful question. How much of what we know about Jesus and his disciples is shaped by faith, and how much has been lost to history? The story of Jesus and his followers doesn't end with his crucifixion or the early miracles that defined his ministry. Beneath the surface of what most of us know lies a treasure trove of untold narratives, accounts that challenge traditional beliefs and offer a more complex view of those who shaped the beginnings of Christianity. One of the most compelling figures in these hidden truths is Mary Magdalene. People have misunderstood and at times deliberately misrepresented Mary Magdalene for centuries. Far from being merely a follower of Jesus, Mary Magdalene played a central role in spreading his teachings. She was more than a witness to his resurrection. She was a trusted disciple, often referred to as the apostle to the apostles in early Christian texts. Her deep understanding of spiritual and metaphysical knowledge set her apart, making her one of the most influential figures in the movement that emerged after Jesus' death. Ancient texts and local traditions in southern France suggest that Mary Magdalene traveled there after the crucifixion, arriving with Joseph of Arimathea and other disciples. Once in France, she began teaching Jesus' message in a way that combined his teachings with her own profound spiritual insights. These teachings emphasized personal transformation, self-discovery, and the ability to connect directly with the divine, a stark contrast to the institutionalized doctrines that would later dominate Christianity. Why, then, has history so diminished her role? One reason lies in the consolidation of power within the early church. As leaders worked to establish a centralized authority, stories of independent figures like Mary Magdalene, who operated outside the control of formal institutions, became inconvenient. Over time, people overshadowed her contributions and reduced her image to that of a repentant sinner, a mischaracterization that has endured for centuries. But the hidden truths don't stop with Mary Magdalene. The concept of the Way, the original movement inspired by Jesus' teachings, reveals a vision of faith that is vastly different from what many of us recognize today. In its earliest form, the Way was not about rituals, hierarchy, or control. It was about community, equality, and the shared pursuit of truth. Followers would gather in homes, sharing teachings, practicing meditation and healing, and exploring their connection to God without the need for centralized authority. One of the most striking aspects of the Way was its emphasis on personal empowerment. Unlike later versions of Christianity, which often emphasized obedience to institutional leaders, the Way encouraged individuals to think for themselves and engage directly with spiritual truths. This decentralized approach allowed Jesus' teachings to adapt and flourish across diverse cultures, from the Mediterranean coast to the British Isles. It is impossible to overestimate Joseph of Arimathea's contribution to this movement. After his miraculous survival at sea, he established a community in Glastonbury, England, that became a hub for the Way. According to local traditions, this was where the first Christian church was built, not as a grand cathedral, but as a simple gathering place where people could learn, teach, and heal together. The spirit of the Way was reflected in its openness. Anyone could contribute, and all were seen as equal in their pursuit of faith. This vision, however, posed a threat to the emerging structures of power within the early church. By the 4th century, as Christianity became the official religion of the Roman Empire, the decentralized practices of the Way were largely replaced by a more rigid hierarchy. Bishops, councils, and later popes assumed control, and the original teachings of Jesus, focused on personal growth and spiritual freedom, were reframed to support the new power structures. But remnants of the Way persisted. In France, England, and other regions touched by Joseph of Arimathea, Mary Magdalene, and their companions, local traditions kept the spirit of this early movement alive. Generations passed down stories of their journeys, teachings, and sacrifices, even as the official narratives of Christianity left them out. Are you enjoying the story? Support our channel by clicking the subscribe button. These hidden truths challenge us to rethink what we know about the origins of Christianity. They remind us that faith was never meant to be confined to a single interpretation or controlled by a select few. Instead, it was a living, dynamic force that adapted to the needs and experiences of those who embraced it. The early followers of Jesus didn't gather in grand cathedrals or under the watchful eyes of priests. Instead, they met in humble homes, under open skies, and in quiet places where they could safely share his teachings. The Way, a movement, differed from the organized churches that many are familiar with today. It was a revolutionary idea built on equality, personal empowerment, and the shared pursuit of spiritual growth. The Way was fundamentally about individuals uniting, not to follow a single leader, but to make equal contributions to the community. Everyone had a voice, and every voice mattered. Whether you were young or old, a man or woman, your role was essential. This decentralized approach to faith was the cornerstone of how Jesus' teachings spread in the years following his crucifixion. The gatherings were simple but profound. In these early communities, members would sit together to discuss teachings, meditate, and practice healing. There were no altars, no robes, and no hierarchy. Instead, they shared meals, prayed together, and explored the spiritual lessons Jesus had taught during his life. This method allowed individuals to grow spiritually in a way that was deeply personal, yet supported by the collective wisdom of the group. But why was decentralization so important? It allowed the Way to adapt to different cultures and regions. As Jesus' followers traveled, whether it was Joseph of Arimathea in England, Mary Magdalene in France, or others in Spain, they brought his teachings to new communities. Instead of imposing rigid rules, they embraced local traditions, weaving them into the fabric of the Way. This flexibility made it easier for the message of Jesus to resonate across diverse groups of people, Glastonbury, England, provides one of the most compelling examples of this decentralized approach. The same principles were seen in France, where Mary Magdalene is believed to have established her own spiritual centers. These communities emphasized learning, healing, and individual growth, reflecting her profound understanding of Jesus' message. Her teachings didn't follow a strict doctrine, but instead encouraged people to seek their own truth and develop a personal connection with the divine. This decentralized model was in stark contrast to the hierarchical systems that would later define organized religion. In the way, there were no popes, bishops, or other figures who held absolute authority. Decisions were made collectively, and leadership was fluid, often rotating among community members. This structure ensured that no individual could dominate the group or dictate the practice of faith. The beauty of the way lay in its ability to empower individuals while fostering a sense of unity. It encouraged people to take responsibility for their own spiritual journeys while supporting one another along the path. This balance between independence and community made the way deeply resilient, even in the face of persecution and suppression. From their dangerous exile across the Mediterranean to the establishment of secretive yet thriving communities, the early followers of Jesus carried his teachings like a flame in the dark. They were not just passive witnesses to history. They were its architects, shaping a movement that would ripple across centuries. These individuals were not just followers. They spearheaded a faith that prioritized connection and empowerment over control. If this journey into the hidden truths of Jesus and his disciples is inspiring you, challenging your perspective, and sparking your curiosity, you can help us keep uncovering more mysteries by supporting our work. By clicking the Super Thanks button, you're joining us in sharing these stories, preserving their legacy, and spreading knowledge to others seeking deeper truths. Your support is empowering us to create more content, dig deeper into history, and bring light to untold stories. The early disciples carried these ideas forward despite unimaginable odds. They faced exile, persecution, and even death, yet they persisted. Their courage exemplifies the enduring power of faith, rooted in something deeper than tradition, when it is alive, personal, and transformative. They proved that faith is not just about rituals or rules, but about how it is. They demonstrated that faith inspires people to live, love, and connect, not just through rituals or rules. Hidden, what truths remain buried in ancient texts, untold legends, or forgotten traditions? The story we've uncovered here is just one part of a much larger tapestry, a mosaic of faith and resilience that stretches across centuries. As we peel back the layers of history, we find not just answers, but also new questions that compel us to keep searching. And that's where the power of this story truly lies, not in providing definitive conclusions, but in inspiring us to think, to question, and to seek our own understanding. The legacy of Jesus and his disciples challenges us to break free from the limits of what we've been taught and to explore the depths of what might still be uncovered. In the end, the story of Jesus and his disciples is a mirror, reflecting back the timeless truths we so often overlook. It serves as a reminder that faith is not based on external beliefs, but rather on our personal discoveries. It is a call to action, a challenge to keep the flame alive, just as those early followers did, even in the face of overwhelming darkness. The choice is yours, and as you carry this knowledge forward, remember the courage of those who came before us, the ones who risked everything so that the light of truth could shine just a little brighter in the world. As we continue to seek, question, and uncover the truths that remain untold, let their story serve as your guide. Thanks for watching. Join our community by subscribing to this channel. Stay tuned for the upcoming video.